Just a 5-minute warning. We'll get started in 5 minutes. We'll be starting in about 3 minutes. Two-minute warning. Grab your waters and your coffee and whatever beverages. We're going to get started in just a few more minutes. Thanks for being patient, everyone. Hello, 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 everyone. I'm at Lightology right now on this very gray, rainy day in Chicago. And just wanted to introduce myself for all of you who may not know me. I'm Jill Maremont, and I run the River North Design District. And on behalf of the district and Lightology, I'd like to welcome you today to Don't Be in the Dark, Technology and Lighting Solutions for Residential Designers. So before I introduce our speakers today, I'd like to thank our host Lightology and our generous sponsors, Arteriors, Barrett's Technology Solutions, and our partners Savant and ASID Illinois. So we have some super duper cool giveaways today and 3 lucky attendees, and you have to hang out for the whole session. You don't want to miss anything. Will win a noon starter kit from Savant with full installation provided by Barrett's Technology Solutions. And also attendees will be registered to win a geometric Damon table lamp from Arteriors Home. It's gorgeous. So thank you so much for being here. We have 309 people today attending our event, and we're also simultaneously broadcasting on Lightology's Facebook page, as well as on ASID Illinois and River North Design District's Facebook live page as well. So if for some reason you have some friends that want to join and can't get in, they can tune in there. But we'll also be recording the broadcast today so that if you want to, refer to the lecture at another time, you can do so. So at the end, we're going to be doing a Q&A. So please save your questions and just post them in the chat box and we'll get to you at the end. So our program's about 45 minutes and we definitely will have enough time at the end to take some questions. So our speakers today are amazing. So I'd like to take some time and introduce them. So we have Gutin from Savant and Kiersten Hoiland from Hoiland Studios. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about Aaron. So he's the Specification Development Director at Savant. He's actually based in LA. I know that not all of you are in Chicago, where we are right now. So the beauty of all of this is that we can just be anywhere. So we're excited to have Aaron from LA joining us as a speaker. He's developed expertise in many technical disciplines, including sound engineering, AV production, AV distribution, lighting control, and advanced IP networking. So he's been a member of the Savant team since 2014. And like I mentioned before, he's the specifier education. He leads the specification education initiative and is the specification development director. And then we also have Kiersten Hoiland, who is the principal lighting designer at Hoiland Studios. And Hoiland Studios is a full service lighting design firm based in Chicago, specializing in high-end residential, hospitality, retail, and art lighting projects. So the studio works with designers and develops lighting plans specifically tailored to the project by addressing the client's wants and needs and responding to the architectural aesthetic and really understanding the function of the space. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Kiersten.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jill, for the introduction. And so I just want to kind of get started by saying my background is in interior architecture. So I come to the space and design thinking about the interior and how it feels and how everything fits together from a lighting perspective. So it's not just throwing lights in there just for the sake of lighting things up, but it's really being thoughtful about integrating everything together. And it goes without saying, but lighting is everything, right? Okay, so as we get started, it's worth mentioning that lighting is so important in a space. It can really make or break a space, as we know. And remember ultimately that your eye is drawn to the brightest objects in the space. And think about what you want that to be. So it creates a visual hierarchy. And we want to make sure that the art or the finishes or the amazing space as a whole is brighter potentially than the actual fixture itself. So the architectural lighting should really just evaporate into the space and be integrated as opposed to standing out. Lighting also has the opportunity to create drama where we want it and accentuate textures, bring finishes to life. As you can see in this image, the headboard texture just really comes to life with this soft wash on it. And it ultimately affects how you feel. But lighting is only as good as the following. So the layers of light in the space. We want to make sure that we have at least 3 layers of light, and they come from different sources. So maybe we have a central decorative fixture providing ambient light, and then accent light on artwork or materials or a furniture piece. And then more ambient light potentially from a lamp or sconces. And we want to also think about this in collaboration with the natural daylight coming in, because perhaps you don't need a lot of electric light during the day, but at night, thinking about all of the spaces as a whole, 3-dimensionally, is going to be so important. Then also, it's only as good as the light fixture locations. And this is really important, and I see this a lot, where we're not always thinking about the ceiling heights and where those recessed lights in particular are supposed to be placed. So be very mindful. Think about, again, the elevations, where you want that light to be aimed and oriented, whether it's a recessed light or perhaps you're adding another layer from a picture light or sconces. But particularly from recessed lights, think about the aiming angles and the fixture, the specifications of the fixture and what the maximum tilt can be, because we want to make sure that those fixture locations are as optimal as possible and potentially flexible for the future. So lighting is also only as good as the products that are installed. This is so important. So think about the levels of finish in your spaces. And sometimes we have spaces with A level, B level, C level spaces. So the lighting should also match those levels of finishes. And when we're thinking about products, Aaron will touch on this during his half of the presentation, and then we can kind of talk about this at the end too. But some key things to think about are the color temperature. We've seen and heard all of this already. And the color rendering index, the CRI, making sure that they match. And that is so important. I would highly recommend seeing samples of the fixtures themselves and mocking them up on the finishes or on the artwork if it's possible, because we really can't trust the spec sheets as much as we really want to. It's always best to see it in person and really understand what the field angle, which is the amount of light coming around like from the center beam, what that actually looks like in real life. Lighting is only as good as the trades who install them. This is so important as well. And this goes across the board where, our designs are only as good as the trades that install them. And we're very lucky in Chicago, in the Chicago market, to have amazing trades that are thoughtful and considerate of the specifications, read the installation instructions. But as lighting becomes more complex, they also need to be educated in what the latest and greatest lighting technologies are. And sometimes we have to be the people who are, educating them and showing and pointing things out that are really specific to the project. And then finally, lighting is only as good as how the lighting is controlled in the space and the ease of control. And especially for residential projects, I've found that most of my clients just want it to be simple. They want the easy lights on, lights off, dim, great, done. But then other clients are really more on the techie side, and they do want to have that extra layer of control. And, we'll figure out exactly what that is from their perspective. So as I'm thinking about lighting design from a lighting designer's perspective, and what you can do is thinking about it within these 3 pillars of design. So thinking about the architectural aesthetic, the function of the space, and the client's preferences. So starting with the architectural aesthetic, again, I think that the architectural lighting is the best supporting actor to the well-designed space. So with that, I really want to make sure that the architectural lighting is integrated seamlessly into the design. And you can see in these 3 images that the lighting needs and the fixtures selected are vastly different. And that goes with decorative lighting, architectural, and everything in between. So being very thoughtful and mindful of making sure that we can enhance the architecture with the lighting is the first pillar. Then thinking about the function of the space. So what kind of layers of light do we need based on the function? Here we have a kitchen and then we have a gym. So we're going to have different light fixtures, we're going to have different light level needs and potentially control. So in a kitchen, we definitely want to have task light. We want an ambient light. We need a lot of light for maybe a cooking kind of scene. And then we also want to be able to turn it down in the evening. And perhaps if it's on a lighting control system, we would have an evening scene where just a low level of light is on. And then in a gym, we can have more fun here, I think, where we can have colored lighting. And you'll see this a little bit in Erin's presentation as well. So, thinking about how you actually want to function in the space, that'll drive the design decisions. And then finally, the client preferences. And this one is the wild card of the 3 pillars because everyone is different based on their, like how they're brought up and their preferences for cool or warm colors or liking really bright spaces or really dim spaces and having the flexibility to do both. And then in this case, I've also worked with a lot of clients who have significant art collections. And you can see on the left that these are just standard contractor grade 5-inch recessed lights. Yes, looked great in the lighting plan, I'm sure, but it wasn't actually functional for their preference of having, gallery walls. So by replacing them with the 4-inch adjustable fixtures, we were able to aim the lights on the art, and ultimately, the art became part of the whole space. So thinking about that, and then also ask them these preference, or ask them about their preferential, or their preferences about lighting at the beginning of the project during the programming phase, because you might also realize that they have health concerns about this as well. I've worked with clients who have macular degeneration or are legally blind, and just thinking about, or also have significant migraines that are caused by, specific lighting. So just kind of be mindful of that so that you can design it from the beginning. So how do we put this all together? So I brought an example and I just wanted to walk you through a project. So here, this is a beautiful Italianate home in the Chicago area. And what we've done, that's undergoing a complete gut remodel, but it's still holding on to a lot of the traditional aspects of the home. So it's a very formal space. And also we just want really easy lighting control and to make it feel just really amazing and lovely. So I always look at the elevations and how it's relating to the rest of the home. So we have the foyer over down on the bottom, and then adjacent is the dining room over to the left. So what we do is start with an additive approach and start with the decorative fixtures. So the interior designer selected this amazing sculptural decorative fixture for the center. And you can see from the light sources that it's not going to give off a lot of light, but that's okay because we can add in other architectural layers to help that. So then we have the 4 lights in the corners, and the 2 on the top are providing a soft wash on the drapery. And then the 2 on the bottom are providing, they're adjustable and they can be aimed towards artwork on those two art walls. And then the A1 fixture right over where it says living room. So that one is intended for illuminating a significant piece of art that will be located over the fireplace. And we pulled that fixture back on purpose, apart from the grid, right? Because we had to make sure that the aiming angle got to that specific height in the center of the piece of art. And then the one just below the decorative is intended to illuminate the coffee table. So then on the right side, we have a pin spot illuminating the game table. And then we wanted to also create some drama because this is really the end view of a long axis. So we added these in-grade uplights to provide a soft wash up on the drapery in this window niche. And I think it'll just be lovely too, as people are walking by, to see this uplight glow on the ceiling as well. And then on the opposite side, on the left, the interior designers selected these bookshelf lights above the bookshelves. And that is very true to a traditional home, but we know that they only really illuminate the top shelf, or at least you do know now, or you at least know now. But we're adding linear lighting within each shelf in order to make everything feel really soft and warm and create balance, so that we'll have the vertical illuminated on that end, as well as the verticals illuminated with the uplights on the opposite end. And then we also have 2 lamps within the seating area and 2 sconces going through the threshold, just adding another level of punctuation with the decorative fixtures. So if you add up all of these layers of light, it becomes 11 layers or lighting loads. Now, there's no way we would ever have 11 dimmers on a wall, especially in a home like this. So luckily we have a lighting control system. And again, the client's preferences is to make it as simple as possible. So we're using on the front end a more old world look with push buttons in an unlacquered brass. And the top scene is going to be the bright scene, and the lower scene is going to be the dim scene. So then with 2 presses, we can change all of the lighting levels in the space very easily. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Aaron so he can go into more of the latest lighting technologies that we're seeing in lighting fixtures and lighting controls.
Awesome, thank you so much. Let me just share my screen here. Great. All right, so we should be seeing my screen. Forgive my swiping through here. I've got my Keynote up. Here we go. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you to Lightology and Kiersten for involving us in this awesome opportunity to talk about something that I really enjoy. So as Kiersten mentioned, we're not going to put 11 dimmers in somebody's living room anymore. And as you can see from this terrible example of what happens when you have multiple layers of light in an old mode of thinking when it comes to lighting control, you end up with an eyesore. And all of us have been in a room, a home, a business, a restaurant, especially is usually worst offender, where we just see an endless array of switches on the wall. They didn't even bother to P-touch label these, so somebody knew what those dials did. And this is really the driving factor for lighting control. Lighting control as a thing is really almost 40 years old at this point. And every decade as technology moves forward, we are able to do more with less, and we're going to spend some time talking about that aspect from the keypad. When it comes to lighting, we'll talk about how the opposite has happened. So, you know, what lighting control does is it takes all of those different switches and really allows us to merge them into a very easy to use, hopefully clearly labeled keypad on the wall. And here's an older style keypad. We can clearly understand where the chandelier light is, what the party button might do, dining room, maybe scene 1 and scene 2 are familiar to the homeowner, but we can read what's on these buttons, and maybe these buttons are not only controlling 11 loads of lighting in that beautiful living room, but also the hallway and some adjacent rooms that might spill some light into that space. And this is the benefit of lighting control. No matter what the vendor is that is providing the lighting control solution, the primary focus is a reduction of keypads in the wall without a reduction of functionality. And when it comes to light itself, obviously everyone on this call has lived through, I think, one of the most major shifts in lighting technology in the 100+ years that electric light has been in our lives. The CFL and the LED, not only have they reduced the amount of energy we need versus the amount of brightness we want to yield, but they've introduced new challenges. Obviously, you've all worked on, I shouldn't say obviously, but hopefully you are familiar with projects where at very low levels, we see flicker from LED. There have been some challenges as this new technology continues to be perfected, but these have created, again, a very lovely energy footprint. We've expanded the amount of brightness that we can deliver. And because of the tiny size of the LED itself, we can start putting lights in places where we once could not. Great example, the uplights that Kiersten just showed are definitely, most likely an LED diode in a tiny little housing firing up on that wall, producing a ton of warm, inviting light. And that used to be a much bigger fixture that you'd have to accommodate versus that tiny little puck she showed. And this is also true of specification grade fixtures. The advent of LED lighting has changed the form factor. We can see a heat sink right above that LED board. We need to pull heat off of the LEDs, and that will expand or at least ensure you get the radical lifespan out of an LED. We talk about LEDs in the range of 20,000 hours, which is almost 3 times what you would expect from a traditional filament-based bulb. There's also the addition with LED of color. So if we think about the old mode of a single filament-based bulb, we really got one mode. We made it brighter, we raised or lowered intensity, and the more resistance we got a different sort of temperature, but a very fixed range out of that. With LEDs, we've introduced things like tunable white and full saturated RGB, or both of those, RGB and white, existing on the same board, which has created an opportunity for all of us as designers to introduce new ways to control light and color inside both a commercial environment and a residential space. On top of that, there has been 70 years of research on how our body actually reacts to light. And this plays a major role in the investments that many manufacturers in the lighting space are making in tunable lighting. This is the same room. We're all looking at this beautiful living space in New York. And as we look from left to right, we actually see that the fixtures in the ceiling are actually shifting temperature by time of day. And during the day, as we look on the left side, that beautiful, vibrant, 5,000 Kelvin daylight really makes this beautiful white kitchen come to life. It looks like all of that light is just pouring through some open windows. As we make our way to the left, we see that the sun is set and it's night outside, and we get that beautiful warm yellow that we're all used to from incandescent bulbs. This is the state of lighting today. It's going to change so many ways that we live and work. There are massive benefits that have been identified scientifically, but this isn't just about where we live and relax. It's also about where we work out. And so here's a great example of a studio, or at least a home gym. And we can see, based on the activity that this young lady is taking on in this space, the lights are actually set up to amplify that. So, warm up, you get warm lighting, pun intended. Maybe as we work in the zone or we're doing a more intense workout, we want that bright, vibrant daylight like we're taking a jog. And then for yoga or something more relaxing and focused on the self, we have some nice purple lighting that really invites you to sort of chill out, get into your own space, and try and block out everything else outside the gym so you can find that moment of zen in your day. Again, we see all of these temperatures and saturated color from the same fixtures in the same space. Now, to control all of this, you definitely need more than just a traditional dimmer, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Now, from a wellness perspective, this is something I'm sure all of you have heard about. There is, again, over 70 years of commercial, military, government research that has demonstrated that we actually produce or suppress melatonin based on the temperature of light we are exposed to. And there are many manufacturers investing in this technology. Most importantly, there's been a recent discovery about the anatomy of the human eye, and a new nerve was discovered about 20 years ago, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is a big word to learn how to say, but effectively this little nerve's job is to measure the temperature of light our eyes are seeing and to communicate with our brain and tells our body to produce, again, or suppress melatonin. If you're not familiar, melatonin's the chemical that makes you feel sleepy. And when we're suppressing it, we feel awake. Now, you can imagine in a business environment, you want your staff to be awake and vibrant and full of energy during the day so they can be productive. If you've worked in an office with lots of yellow light and you just eat lunch, I think that plays a role in why everybody feels a little sleepy after that nice meal versus feeling more awake and energized after eating. And if you want to learn more about this, just type DMX in the Q&A or the chat. And we're going to save all that and we can reach out to you and set up a time to provide either, more information or get you in touch with someone who can take you through a deeper dive of the science behind this. Now, the result of this is a lighting environment that can now embrace the natural cycle of the sun outside. We start warm in the morning, we get cool and vibrant by the middle of the day, and then we progress back to that warmer temperature as the sun sets. And this is directly correlated to our experience on this planet. From the moment humans were evolved on this planet, we did our hunting and gathering during the day when we had the most light. And then as the sun set, we started to gather together, not only for protection, but for comfort. As the sun set and we only had the stars at night or fire, this temperature, clearly this light or this yellow light has really ingrained a sort of biorhythm into our DNA, into our firmware, to be a geek for a second. So, we can literally change the mood of a room by changing the temperature of light. And today, as I mentioned, most of us work under terrible, terrible fluorescent lighting. And, this type of lighting tends to create not the most relaxing space, certainly isn't great for energy. If you've seen Joe versus the volcano, it certainly can create some feelings of like, this is terrible, I can't see what I'm doing. And now we're staring at these things all night. And, our devices, while they have created new ways to communicate, new ways to stay in touch with our friends and family, just like this session we're all in virtually today, staring at that screen in bed before you try and go to sleep is doing the opposite of what you think. Some people think that it allows them to wind down, but the blue light that's emanating from that screen is literally telling your body to suppress its production of melatonin, which makes you more awake. And so if you're having trouble sleeping and you like to read these devices before you go to bed, I'm going to encourage you to pick up an old-fashioned book and notice the difference. Maybe you doze off while you're reading and have to find your place there in the morning versus feeling more awake after you've read a couple chapters of that new novel you're reading on your iPad. Now, let's tie this back to what Kiersten was talking about. So let's assume we all accept the fact that we can change color, we can change temperature, that there are benefits to this both aesthetically and medically. It has radically change the type of keypads you can deploy in a controlled lighting environment. Now, that button that says daylight mode is, imagine your lights are able to turn on to the correct temperature based on time of day simply by pressing that button. it adds a ton of functionality because now we have one single button that gives us the accurate light we want whenever we want it. It also opens up other buttons like relax and entertain. And in this case, I'm just demonstrating that that raise and lower option that we're all familiar with lighting can now actually be dedicated for regulating natural light, so the shades. So let's look at this. So the traditional smart keypad might be engraved something like this, right? We're all familiar with this as designers, bright, mid, dim, and off. What if I told you that actually bright, mid, dim, and off are direct correlatives to those times of day that we just reviewed? It makes for a sort of an aha moment when we connect these two, because yeah, we use bright for task lighting and a mid for ambiance and late night dim, right? So some Kiersten hit on, and then of course the off button, no light, stars at night. These tie directly to times of day and the amount of light we would be getting from the sun and the type of temperature we'd be getting from the sun. And because today modern lighting control systems with advanced LED fixtures can actually change not just intensity, but temperature and saturation, we're able to replicate this experience inside someone's living environment. This creates for a more inviting, more relaxed space where the available daylight is amplified, making the room feel more alive, more open, and inviting. And you can see, if we just look at those 4 quadrants, morning, day, evening, and night, bright, mid, dim, and off, we can fold those all into one simple button called daylight mode. Now, of course, there's a companion to this in modern lighting systems where we can easily turn on daylight mode in any room with a check mark. What this does is it opens up 2 buttons for our customer. And this brings more functionality to that single keypad that we're hoping we can put in that beautiful room that you've designed meticulously, picked out every color, every lamp, every shade, and it opens up those relax and entertain buttons. Maybe even those buttons are configured by the customer for the customer when the customer wants to, simply by going into a space of an app and assigning a scene they created to those physical buttons. This really opens up a ton of promise for lighting systems and entertainment and living with smarter lighting, in that we're putting more control in the hands of the customer. We're enhancing the experience they're getting from the lights that are deployed, and we're taking advantage of advances in LED technology. And so when we look at modern lighting systems, they really now can encompass everything from the breaker in the electrical panel all the way to the bulb in the lamp on the table side. This includes regulating natural light with motorized shades, dynamic fixtures, keypads, smart bulbs, whether it's a centralized lighting system or a wireless-based retro lighting system. These types of functions are going to become more and more and more commonplace in new build and certainly commercially. It's a very exciting time to be in the lighting space. So one of the most common questions I get when we cover this is, what's it cost? So here's just a great way to start thinking about the budgeting of this. So here are 4 different color technologies, everything from just white to full WRGB in Infinite Color Plus. And we can see that these recessed 3 fixtures, as an example, they're going to span from about $11 a square foot to about $25 a square foot on the higher range. And again, if you want to know more about this, just type in DMX and Lightology. We're going to reach out to you and get some more information in your hands. This is a great way to set up accurate expectations for your customer as you start to discuss these new types of lighting technologies, whether it's a gut remodel, as Kiersten covered, or a brand new build. Now, when it comes to lighting control technology, here's a couple easy per square foot numbers you can use in your own work to get a good idea of what kind of budget allocation you should be discussing with your customer. So for wireless lighting, this is a traditional remove old dimmer, replace it with a new smart dimmer type of approach. If you use that $4.30 a square foot, you're going to get a very good working budget that will accommodate wall plates, dimmers, and keypads with multiple buttons in multiple rooms of a house. And from a centralized lighting perspective, and again, this is where all the HOTS are run to a central location, and we're using low voltage keypads in our rooms around a house or a building to control that lighting. We want to use that $6.80 a square foot number. And that's, again, going to give you a very good ballpark number to use as a general budgeting number. And this is one of the places where I think everybody falls flat on their face at least once in your career, is not setting up accurate expectations. So I hope you use this information to your advantage. Now, I'm Aaron Gutin. As they mentioned, I'm the Specification Development Director at Savant. I work both with specifiers and with our dealer base, like Barrett's technology, to ensure that we're doing great education sessions like this and interfacing with specifiers as they are learning more about this new technology. And with us today is Casey. Casey is the Savant representative in Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Michigan, and he and I are here to help you should you have any questions. I want to thank Lightology for allowing us to join you today. At Savant, we focus on a brighter and stronger lighting experience for everybody, and this is a great opportunity to talk to all of you professionals about what is happening in lighting technology. And the best part is everything I talked about today is available from multiple vendors in the space. So this is not a unique thing to Savant. This is really what's happening with lighting everywhere. And these types of events are really, really important to ensure that we as specifiers are all up to speed on what's possible. Thank you, Jill. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Thanks, Aaron. So I see there are a lot of DMXs in our chat box, so that's amazing. So feel free to start submitting questions so we can address those. So one question is from Mindy Kim. So she's asking if there's a calculator template that designers can use for budget planning.
So I tried to include those examples of per square foot. We do have a sheet, at least for our offering, that does detail per square foot numbers based on fixtures. That's going to vary by vendor. And so I think it's challenging when you to talk about a general, but I think in general, that round about $5 to $7 a square foot is a good place to start when you're thinking about lighting control. And for fixtures, I think all of us know that can range from I ran down to Lowe's and bought a $50 thing to I'm buying a state-of-the-art fixture that I saw at the Smithsonian because I fell in love with it and I have this beautiful piece of art that I want to make shine, as Kiersten showed us in her example.
Is there sort of a rule of thumb, like a range of budget that would include the fixtures, the design, the controls, and the installation? Like everything.
Again, I think that varies. Sorry, Kiersten, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, not really from my perspective, because it can really vary based on the design. I mean, if the client makes decisions really quickly, the design process and my design fee could be much lower than if somebody keeps spinning their wheels and changing and changing and changing throughout the design process. But also the number of layers of light and the quantity of fixtures in the space. Because, like, for example, the linear lighting in the bookshelves that I showed, if you do that in every single room, that's going to add up a lot more than Aaron's square foot number just as a budget, right? So it's all about thinking about how many layers of light you're going to have in the space. And there's really no good way to budget it without really having a preliminary plan in place. Once you have a preliminary plan, then we can do the budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to build on that, if we add up just those examples, a centralized lighting system at $7 a square foot, just to round up the number, and a full IC plus changes any color at $25 a square foot, all of a sudden we're in that $40 a square foot neighborhood, and we haven't even considered accent lighting, under cabinet lighting, up lighting, decorative lighting, lamps and chandeliers. So it really does vary quite a bit.
Thank you so much for addressing that. So Karen Reddish wrote, or she was asking where the uplighting is located that lights up the drapery.
Yes, so the depth of the drapery is taken into account. So then it is, I think, 4 or so inches in front of the drapery stack.
So on the ceiling or the floor?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's on the floor. It's
Okay.
in the floor. So clear coordination needs to take place with the trades to make sure that you have that space available. And since this was a single family home, they had joist construction so we could fit the lights within the floor. But again, if you're in a condo with concrete slabs, then unfortunately that solution is not an option. But maybe something else similar or a portable uplight.
Okay, thanks. So Marcia Swinegert has written about a general rule of thumb for recessed lighting in a residence as far as the distance from the recessed fixture to the wall.
It all depends on the ceiling height. So a 9-foot ceiling, typically 2 feet. If it's an 11-foot ceiling, it's maybe more like 3 feet. But I highly recommend looking at the fixture and how it's going to function. If it's more of an ambient general lighting fixture, or if it's intended for art. And a simple CAD drawing, looking at the height of the ceiling, distance away, and then drawing a line at a 30-degree angle, if that's what you're intending it to do, or putting in a beam spread to understand how that's going to function in the space is highly recommended.
Great, thanks. So Mike Burke says he's just a homeowner, which you're not just a homeowner. We're happy to have you on this call and that you're interested in learning more about fixtures and lighting controls. And yes, you're absolutely eligible to get more information. So, so someone will reach out to you. So John Briggs writes, how do you incorporate color changing LED, WRGB into lighting control, multi-zone, multi-scene systems? That's complicated. It sounds complicated.
Well, this is where I guess I'll just lean in a little bit. I mean, this is something that Savant has focused on for the last 4 years. And, it's a combination of a great user interface. That's not just the keypad in the wall, but it's also the electronics that are talking to the light and the user interface. So we saw just a brief example of our application. Again, we're not the only ones playing ball in this ballpark. But it really is the culmination of some logical elements, software, some physical elements, the light itself, and then a great user interface, not to mention a great integrator or someone who's really in charge of, just like Kiersten is in charge of the ultimate lighting design and ensuring that on paper it all works and then in actuality it happens. A great integrator is going to work with a homeowner directly, the other trades on the project, to ensure everything is being taken care of, from the wire that needs to be there to Kiersten's call out for spacing on wall washes or adjustable lights. And then again, a great user interface that ties that all together. We spent the better part of 2 years working with the Lighting Science Foundation before we launched our daylight mode to ensure that we were dead on accurate to all of the research that had been done. In the end, as you saw, our customer just check marks when they want to turn on daylight mode, or I can walk up to a button right here in my own, I'm just a homeowner too, my own dining room, and press a button that says daylight, and it will turn on exactly the way I want to. So it's tricky with retro. If you don't have access to the ceiling, you just have to be committed. But it like in all things design, it takes a village. It's not just the lighting designer. It's not just the interior designer. It's not just an integrator. It's the collective result of their work together.
Such a good point, Aaron. So Nick Cod has a dilemma, and it's very interesting, I must say. So he writes, I have had trouble with conventional dimmers in oceanfront condos. I've used good quality product, but it tends to fail after an unacceptable period of time, which we would probably love to know what that looks like, how much time. The electrician blames it on the environment. The sliders are often open. The air is often humid and salty, almost like a yacht environment. Are these newer controls reliable in these harsher environments?
So, salty air is something we deal with here in Los Angeles and other spaces, or the places, I should say, around the country. There really isn't a perfect solution for salty, humid air and electronics. They tend to not like each other very much over longer periods of time. One approach is a more low voltage type keypad where you've got a centralized lighting system and the cost of that device is lower. But I think when you live near the ocean, one of the things that we all accept when we live near that beautiful part of a space is that the salty air is going to have an effect on the paint on our house, the wood outside, the outdoor speakers, the brass railing in your house. It has a very different effect. Just as like living, in New Zealand in a more humid environment is going to have a different effect on the materials you elect to build your home with. So, unfortunately, it's just one of those things that hasn't been perfectly resolved. Maybe one day we'll have a new material that can withstand corrosion for longer periods of time. But unless there's a magical way to pull the salt out of the air, then it is one of those things that unfortunately you're going to grapple with a little bit. And you're going to have shorter lifespans on all electronics in your home because of that salty, humid air.
Okay. Stephen, did I miss any questions that you see?
I see one here. Forgive me if it's been answered already. This might be for Kiersten. Is the industry addressing the evidence of blue LED light wavelengths to cataract and aging eye conditions? Perhaps there are new generation options. Aaron, that might be for you too.
I personally have not seen that specifically. Have you, Aaron?
So look, I'm wearing glasses that, get rid of some of that blue wave because of this. Something my eye doctor brought out to me 2 years ago as we were starting to see more, plastic lenses that took that into account. This is one of those places where I would say that buying a good fixture is probably a good start. No matter the vendor, if they're paying attention to the LED board they're using, how they're pulling heat off that board and how they're managing the curve, or at least the onboard dimming curve, that's going to go a long way to help. And again, this is an argument not to just use white LEDs, because you tend to get more of that blue spectrum with just basic white versus a mixture of yellow, amber, and white, creating a more incandescent-like filament approach.
Okay.
Another question for Aaron. How do you incorporate color changing LED, RGB or Rgbw into lighting control multi-zone, multi-scene systems?
So the way that we do it is we work obviously with a light that can change any color, and we use DMX, which is at this point almost a 45-year-old stage lighting technology that can tell the light what it wants to, what color to change. And we've created a really cool user interface that allows the customer to choose their color, but also that daylight mode where it's scheduled and automatically happening in the background. So, for Savant and GE Lighting, it was as much about the dimmer in the wall as it is about the phone in your hand, because there is a digital element talking to these lights now to change color. And one of the first conversations Kiersten and I had about this was that a dimmer only really accounts for one of the variables you need to control with modern LED lighting. It used to be again, more resistance, less resistance, we get more light, less light. But now we need color, saturation, and intensity. And so again, it's the combination of an intelligent system talking to the lighting system and an intelligent light that can change color.
Okay, one more question. So can you recommend a reliable wet listed motion sensor recessed light, please? So I'm just a homeowner, but I recently redid my bathroom, and correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the motion sensors actually on the switch and not on the fixture?
Most of the time, for residential at least.
Okay. So do you have to have the motion sensor wet listed for a bathroom?
Usually it's the keypad itself that is wet rated so that it can be in a more humid environment like a sauna or, a steamy bathroom. I would just say that this is not something I've encountered regularly in the 20 years I've been doing this for a living. Generally, if you buy a good product, the manufacturer has considered that this dimmer may end up in a bathroom. For fixtures, I'm sure Kiersten would call this out. There are usually specific versions of a light fixture that have been, treated with another coating to account for humidity. You can't battle all of it like we talked about with the salty air, but you can mitigate a lot of it.
So Giovanna says she's seen lights with the motion sensor already in it. Is this common?
I haven't seen it. I think. Sorry, go ahead, Kiersten.
I personally don't use them just because most of my projects have lighting controls, and we don't want to trigger, I'm thinking of a bathroom, for example. We don't want to trigger a bright light to come on if you're going in there at 2 a.m. I would rather have somebody actually go and press the switch or have a little night light set on a lighting control scene as opposed to a motion sensor.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, if the light is on, that motion sensor usually becomes moot if it's actually embedded in the light. The light itself is going to affect that motion detector's ability to sense you. So, we're not quite at Starship Enterprise yet, everyone, but we're getting closer all the time. So presence detection, if someone on this call could figure it out, I can guarantee you it's a multi-billion-dollar market cap. If you can figure out who's in that room and what time of day it is and why they're there and make something happen, we're getting close, but we're not quite there yet.
That's scary.
Yeah, it really is.
So Giovanna thanked us, so I'm assuming we answered her question. I hope that we did. And I think that we're just about out of time. So I wanted to thank everyone for attending. We had very little drop off, if any, from the beginning. So everyone really stuck with us pretty well the whole time. So thank you. So thanks so much to our panelists, Erin and Kiersten, for doing this for us today, and our generous sponsors and partners. And to all of you at home who attended. Like I mentioned earlier, a recording of the presentation will be posted to our social media. So that would be the River North Design Districts and also Lightology social media. And we will be announcing the winners for the giveaway later today. And if you're a winner, we will reach out to you via email. And then once we make contact with you, we will celebrate your names with the rest of the group on social media. So good luck, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.